Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here today. I'm sorry that I'm streaming in remotely with a previously recorded snippet, but I do really appreciate the ability to participate in this hackathon. I'm Michelle Gitlitz. I'm one of the founders and directors of the Art and Antiquities Blockchain Consortium. I'm also a partner and the global head of blockchain and digital assets at Kroll and Mooring, a worldwide law firm based in Washington, D.C. I wanted to talk to you today about becoming fluent in the legal issues surrounding blockchain and DeFi and some applications to the art and antiquities market. We're seeing more wide-scale adoption of both blockchain and cryptocurrencies and some really sophisticated adoption of decentralized finance. And as someone who went to law school during a time where blockchain and crypto didn't even exist and became a practitioner in this industry, I thought it might be helpful to hear some real life examples of what we face as legal practitioners as you think about what areas of law you might want to practice when you graduate from law school. I'm working off of a slide deck that I will provide to all of you. I'm not going to screen share it today because I'm not as sophisticated with screen sharing as I would like to be, but the presentation will be made available to you. The first thing I wanted to talk about was generally the key legal issues. When we're speaking about cryptocurrencies or digital assets, as I'd like to call them, there's a lot of different regulations in the United States that can apply to those digital assets. First, there are securities laws and commodities laws. There's anti-money laundering and sanctions laws. There's state money transmission laws. There's advertising and consumer protection laws, and there's tax laws. And those laws are all regulated and enforced by different government agencies at both the state and the federal level. There's an ongoing debate about where the line between a commodity and a security should be drawn. All digital assets are generally considered commodities. That's what the Commodities Futures and Trading Commission has told us. But whether a digital asset is also a security or an investment contract is an entirely different story. The SEC has jurisdiction to regulate securities. If there's an offer or sale of a digital token that constitutes a security or an investment contract under something that we call the Howey test, then the offering of that digital asset needs to comply with the securities laws. Now, I'm not sure if any of you have actually read SEC v. Howey, but SEC v. Howey is a 1948 case that involves orange groves. And it always puzzles me as to how we can take a case from 1948 that applies to orange groves and use that law to apply to digital assets. But that's what we do. And so our laws haven't really caught up with the current ecosystem of blockchain and digital assets, which is one of the pain points that we have as practitioners. Aside from the SEC, we talked a little bit about the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, the CFTC, and it has jurisdiction to regulate certain types of commodity products such as derivatives, swaps, leverage transactions, but it generally does not regulate the spot market. If you're just trading in a cryptocurrency or a digital asset where there's going to be actual delivery of that digital asset. For example, if Susan were just to send me money to purchase 1 Bitcoin, that's what we would call a spot transaction, where there's actual delivery. Susan gives me her money and I give her the Bitcoin. However, the CFTC has stated that to the extent there's any fraud or manipulation with digital assets, the CFTC is going to exercise its jurisdiction and come in and regulate those digital asset transactions. Thinking more about illicit activity and how digital assets can be used to finance terrorism or for money laundering, the anti-money laundering laws and the Office of Foreign Asset Control also care about what people are doing with digital assets. There are many regulations, such as the Bank Secrecy Act, that if you're a financial institution and you're considered a money services business and you're engaging in something that we call money transmission, you may be regulated by the Bank Secrecy Act and have to do some reporting to the Financial Crime Enforcement Network, and also have some internal compliance procedures like an AML KYC plan to make sure that when you're running your blockchain company or your digital asset company, that you're not selling or offering or having people utilize those digital assets who could be criminals or who could be sanctioned individuals out of Iran or North Korea or other countries that we are not allowed to transact with. Now, when we talk about, the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Commodities Futures and Trading Commission, those are civil enforcement agencies. And so they don't have the ability to come and knock on your door and arrest you and put you in jail if you do something wrong. But when we talk about violations of the Bank Secrecy Act and anti-money laundering controls, those can be criminal violations and they're very serious. So when we counsel clients who are launching new blockchain products particularly with digital assets, we always need to make sure that they're complying with all applicable regulations, including those that could create civil and criminal liability. I want to move on to something now called decentralized finance, or DeFi, which most of you have probably heard of. I feel like DeFi today is where I was sitting in 2015 with Bitcoin. It's new. The government doesn't necessarily, completely understand what it is or how it can be regulated, but they're scared of it and they think it's going to be used for bad and illicit purposes. And like anything else, like the cash in your wallet, I'm sure the cash in your wallet has been used for a bad purpose. I'm sure at some point in the stream of it getting to your wallet, it may or may not have been used in a drug deal, or it may or may not have been used by a terrorist. We don't know because you can't trace cash. The good thing about blockchain and digital assets is that there's an actual ledger and you can trace it. And there are companies like Chain Analysis and other companies who can read that blockchain ledger and figure out what happened and who used the money for illicit purposes. So DeFi is generally an umbrella term that encompasses the vision of a financial system that functions without any intermediaries. Gasp for the banks who always like to be in the middle of all our transactions, or insurance companies or clearinghouses. And DeFi is just operated by the power of smart contracts. And DeFi applications strive to fulfill the services of traditional finance, but in a completely permissionless, global, and transparent manner. DeFi is growing at an astonishing pace, and billions of dollars have been put into the ecosystem just in 2020. And the growth is mainly led by applications that are built on the Ethereum blockchain. One of the issues with DeFi is that it offers anonymity, and it can act as a roadblock for attracting the likes of terrorists and transnational criminals. The looting and sale of antiquities alone generates an estimated $100 million in revenue for ISIS. There's no doubt in my mind that ISIS and other illicit organizations are using DeFi to transact and to hide the business that they're doing. Again, as I mentioned, there are firms who can analyze these blockchains with real world data, and that makes the blockchain a poor means of trafficking things like art and antiquities. But on the other hand, there are smart contracts called mixers like Tornado Cash, which can reroute transactions in very complex ways before reaching the intended recipient and ensuring anonymity. There's also anonymity-focused digital assets like Monero and Zcash that have privacy features coded into their blockchains, and parties who transact with these anonymous cryptocurrencies use those services because they don't want people to know who they are and who they're transacting with. DeFi applications are actually relatively easy to use to conduct illicit trade because any terrorist with an internet connection has access to the entire ecosystem of financial services that lie outside traditional regulated banking systems. And these DeFi protocols are comprised of one or many automated smart contracts. And so the transmission of funds is nearly instantaneous. So it creates a bit of a conundrum. We want, I think, in some respects, to have interoperability and to be able to transact in a financial system with less third-party intermediaries, because transactions will go quicker and they'll be less expensive for all of us. But on the other hand, we have this tension because we know that those same systems can be used to finance terrorism and drug trafficking. And we need to make sure that as we develop this ecosystem, we do so in a way that is legally compliant. So I've given you sort of a big but brief, broad view of what it's really like to be a blockchain and digital asset lawyer, and what some of the issues are that we would deal with every day. And in addition, how we're trying to grow the industry in a way that the government would be acceptable to having it grown, and so that the government doesn't feel, just like it did back in 2015 and 16 with Bitcoin, that it's all a fraud. Bitcoin, I don't think Bitcoin's a fraud. I don't think digital assets are fraud. I think they're great, but I also don't think that they should be used to finance terrorism and drug trafficking. So it's a really fun and a really cool area to practice law in. It's always new, it's always innovative, it's always fun. It can be challenging. It can be interesting to try to educate regulators and explain to them, hey, this is what my client's trying to do. And this is why they're trying to do it, because there are pain points in traditional payment rails and traditional systems. So I hope that all of you have enjoyed this presentation. The deck is going to be available. I'm so sorry that I can't actively participate in the entire hackathon, but I wish you all well. And please, you can always contact me at mgitlitz, Gitlitz, @ crowell.com, crowell.com.